The laughing princesses. The spaceship door hissed open. John stepped out, brushing imaginary dust off his Earth uniform. He had never been on an alien planet before. His boots pressed against the glowing purple tiles of the Royal Hall of Viridia, planet known for its beauty and for looking down on humans. The hall was filled with aliens, tall, elegant beings with glowing skin, silver eyes, and silky white hair. But all eyes weren't on the hall. All eyes were on him, the only human, present. At the end of the hall, 3 thrones sat under a dome of stars. On them sat the 3 royal daughters of King Xalor, each one more stunning than the last. But none of them looked impressed. The first daughter, Silara, crossed her arms and rolled her violet eyes. The second, Vinya, whispered something and laughed, behind her hand. The third, Thaline, simply pointed at John and laughed openly, loudly. "Is this the human Earth has sent?" She chuckled. "He's so small, and his skin is so dull." John blinked. He felt all eyes on him, judging, mocking. His translator chip buzzed inside his ear, turning their alien language into clear, cruel words. Another wave of laughter passed through the hall. The alien nobles smirked. Even the guards chuckled. John clenched his jaw but said nothing. He had come here as an engineer, a peace delegate, Earth's representative. Not a clown. Still, it hurt. Then came the booming voice of King Xalor, echoing through the grand chamber. "That is enough," the king said. Silence. Complete silence. Even the princesses stopped mid-laugh, suddenly aware of their father's tone. The king stood slowly from his throne, tall, regal, and terrifying. He looked directly at John. His sharp eyes scanned the young man from head to toe. "You came alone, human?" he asked. John nodded once. "Yes, your majesty." "You fear nothing?" John hesitated but answered honestly. "I fear many things, but fear doesn't stop me from doing what's right." The king's eyes narrowed, slightly. Behind him, Silara snorted. "He sounds like a hero from an Earth film. So dramatic." The laughter returned. John's hands tightened into fists at his sides, but he kept a straight face. "I didn't come here to impress anyone. I came because you asked Earth for help. Your energy system is failing. I'm the one who can fix it." The king held up a hand. Everyone fell quiet again. "I have heard of humans. Curious creatures, emotional, fragile, but clever, very clever." He turned toward his daughters. "And you mock him before he has even spoken." Silara stepped forward, head high. "We meant no offense, father. He just looks strange, like a walking plant with no leaves." John stayed calm. Barely. The king stroked his long beard and suddenly smiled, slow and strange. "Very well," he said. "Let us make this interesting." All eyes turned to him. "I order the 3 of you," he said, pointing at his daughters, "to spend 3 days with this human on the moon Vathor." Gasps filled the room. "That dead rock?" Vinya cried. "With him?" Thaline pointed again, looking like she'd swallowed a bug. "Yes," the king said. "You say he is weak? You say he is a joke? Then prove it." He leaned forward. 3 days. If you still believe he is beneath you, you may return as you are. But if you fail, if he proves stronger, wiser, or more valuable than you believed, then by my royal word, you will marry him." The sisters froze. Their glowing faces went pale. John's mouth dropped open. "Wait, what?" But the king raised a hand again. No arguments. The princesses looked like they'd been slapped with a space eel. Silara narrowed her eyes at John. "You better not enjoy this." "I was supposed to fix a reactor," John muttered. "Not get married to aliens." The court burst into whispers. The king smiled once more. "You leave at dawn." The king's challenge. "Let's see who the real joke is," the king said. The hall was silent. You could hear the hum of the floating chandelier above, Every noble, every guard, even the musicians, stood still. John's heart was pounding. His ears still rang with the king's last words. If you fail, you will marry him. The three alien princesses stood frozen, their royal pride wounded. Solara was the first to speak. This is unfair. A marriage punishment? For laughing at a man who wears plastic boots? The king didn't smile. Not punishment, education. Thaleen stepped forward. You want us to go camping with a human? On Vathor? That place is barely livable. Vinya added. There are acid storms, feral creatures, no proper toilets. John cleared his throat. I can build a toilet. Solara stared at him like he'd insulted her mother. The king clapped his hands. The sound echoed like thunder. You leave in 1 hour, he said. Take no servants, no guards, no weapons, only what the human brings. Now everyone looked at John. He had a backpack, a multi-tool, some food bars, and a toothbrush. Oh crap, he muttered. The king's royal advisors looked confused. This earthling that cannot protect them, one whispered. Maybe that's the point, the king replied. Perhaps he's stronger than we think. 1 hour later, John stood on the launch pad beside a small shuttle. He checked his gear again, nervously humming an old Earth song. The three princesses arrived in long, glowing robes. But instead of looking royal, they looked like they'd lost a bet. Solara growled, If you stare at me once during the trip, I'll throw you out the airlock. I don't want to marry anyone, John said honestly. I just want to live. Same, Vinya snapped. Thaleen gave him a slow look and whispered, Earthmen talk too much. The shuttle's engines roared. The platform rose into the sky. From the palace balcony, King Zelor watched the shuttle vanish into the clouds, a faint smile on his lips. 3 hours later, moon of Vathor. The shuttle landed hard. Smoke burst from its sides. A warning light blinked. Manual systems only. John groaned. Well, that's broken. The air was thick with yellow mist. Sharp black rocks jutted out of the ground. The sky had 2 suns, both too hot. No trees, no shelter, and the wind howled like angry wolves. Thaleen gagged. This place smells like feet. Vinya slipped on alien slime. This is disgusting, Solara snapped. Where's the palace spa? John adjusted his goggles and sighed. Welcome to survival, princesses. He walked over to a patch of strange plants. He bent down, touched one leaf and grinned. These burn blue. Good for fire. Solara crossed her arms. What do you know about alien plants? I read, John replied, while you were busy mocking. He started cutting plants, stacking rocks, and setting up a makeshift tent in minutes. The sisters just watched. Within an hour, John had built a windscreen, a water filter, and even found edible berries. He tossed one to Vinya. Eat this. You won't die. She stared at it like it was a poison pill. But hunger won. She ate, then blinked. It tastes like vanilla. John smirked. That's 'cause I know what I'm doing. A loud roar echoed from the canyon nearby. Thaleen jumped. What was that? John picked up a glowing stick. Something hungry. Stay near the fire. Solara looked at him, really looked. Are you not scared? John didn't turn around. Terrified, but someone has to stay calm. That night, the fire crackled while the 3 princesses sat close. Closer than they wanted to admit. They whispered to each other, glancing at John, who was silently carving a tool out of rock and metal. Solara whispered. He didn't scream when the cave lizard chased him, Vinya added. And he made dinner. Without poison. Thaleen muttered. I think he's kind of brave. Solara rolled her eyes. He's still ugly. Maybe. But he's not useless. Vinya replied. John didn't hear their words, but he could feel the change in the air. They weren't mocking him anymore. Into the wild moon. You call this a moon? Vinya shrieked, hopping on one foot. Something just licked me, and it had 3 tongues. John didn't even turn. He was too busy dragging heavy stones toward the makeshift shelter he was building out of rock, plant fibers, and pieces from the broken shuttle. His shirt was soaked with sweat, but his hands didn't stop moving. The 3 alien princesses stood nearby, miserably trying not to touch anything, or each other. Their shiny royal robes were now dirt-stained, torn at the edges, and clinging uncomfortably to their perfect glowing skin. "Why is everything wet here?" Thaleen complained. "The air is dry, but the ground is slimy. Is this some kind of cursed place?" John looked over and smirked. "Welcome to Vathor. Wet in the dry places, dry in the wet. Keep whining. It attracts flying things." Solara narrowed her eyes. "I am a daughter of the royal line of Viridia. I do not whine." As if summoned, a screech rang out above them. All 4 looked up. A massive winged creature circled in the sky. Its body shimmered with sharp metallic scales. Its eyes glowed like plasma fire. Thaleen screamed. Vinya ducked. Solara froze. "John?" He calmly pulled out a sonic flare from his belt and lit it with a hiss. The flare blinked 3 times, high-pitched beeps echoed, and the creature soared away. The princesses stared at him. "You didn't even flinch," Vinya said softly. "I used to hike near acid wasps on Mars outposts," John replied. "This is nothing new." He walked past them and dropped the final stone into place. "Shelter's done. Fire pit's ready. I made dry space for sleeping." "You're welcome." The sisters looked around. What had been a rocky death field now looked almost livable. There was a protective half-dome, a fire glowing in a pit, water heating in a carved basin, and strange fruit laid out in a neat line. Thaleen blinked. "You did all this in 2 hours?" John shrugged. "Didn't want you to die. You're kind of rude, but still people." Solara sat down slowly on the flat rock near the fire. She watched John carefully. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. John met her eyes. "Because I was sent to help, and I don't give up." She didn't answer, but she didn't insult him either. Later that evening, the sky turned red. Vathor had no moon of its own, so the double suns gave everything a strange glow, half golden, half violet. John stirred the pot of stew he'd made with local roots and protein bark. The smell was actually pleasant, earthy, spicy, somehow warm. The princesses sat close, finally quiet, their perfect hair now wild, their pride cracked. "Why do you smile when we insult you?" Thaleen asked suddenly. John raised a brow. "I don't. I just hold it in." "But why?" she insisted. He looked up at the strange sky. "Because words don't matter if you know who you are. You can laugh at me, but it doesn't change what I can do." Solara stared at the flames. "You're not like other humans we've seen in holovids." "Yeah," John said. "Hollywood lies." They all laughed, genuinely this time. But the peace didn't last long. A low rumble rolled through the ground. The fire flickered, stones shifted. "What now?" Vinya whispered. John stood up fast. "Lava worms," he said, "big ones." He grabbed a metal rod and twisted it into a makeshift spear. The ground behind their shelter exploded in sparks and smoke. A massive worm burst from the soil, screeching, its slimy body covered in molten cracks. The princesses screamed. John jumped. In front of them, holding the rod tight. "Back into the shelter, now!" He slashed at the worm's face. Sparks flew. The creature snapped at him, barely missing his shoulder. "Go!" he shouted again. The princesses ran, Solara looking back, once her eyes wide with something new, fear, not for herself, for him. John shouted and drove the rod into the worm's soft eye. The creature let out one final shriek and vanished back into the burning earth. John fell to one knee, panting. When he turned, he found all 3 princesses staring at him. He expected mockery, sarcasm, maybe another joke, but instead Solara walked forward, bent down, and touched his arm. "You saved us," she whispered. John smiled weakly. "Yeah, you're not so bad after all," Vinya whispered. "Maybe we were wrong," Thaleen nodded. "Or stupid." They all looked at the human sitting in the dirt, holding a glowing spear. The moon wasn't wild anymore. The wildest thing here was the human. One night, one fire. The fire crackled, but the silence between them was louder. For the first time since arriving on Vathor, the alien princesses were not complaining, not laughing, not mocking. They were watching John, not just looking, watching. His back was turned, his hands moving steadily as he repaired a snapped solar coil from the shuttle, using melted rock as a bonding agent. His shoulders were tense but focused, his face glowing slightly from the nearby flame. Solara sat closest to the fire, hugging her knees. Her once glittering dress was now dirt-smudged, one sleeve torn. But she didn't care. She was staring at the human with new eyes. "What's he made of?" she muttered to herself. Thaleen, lying beside her on a bed of woven moss, whispered, "Not fear, that's for sure." Vinya blew gently on a hot bowl of stew John had made from alien roots. Not weakness either. They were royalty, taught to hate humans or at least pity them. But here, on a forgotten moon with death crawling beneath the soil, the only one who didn't break was him. John finally turned around. His voice broke the silence gently. "You all okay?" 3 nods. "Quiet. Honest." He handed Solara a hot plate and sat down with his own. "I figured I'd be dead by now," he said, half joking. "You almost were," Thaleen said softly. "Why did you fight that lava worm? You could have run." John shrugged. "Didn't want to leave you behind. But we treated you badly," Vinya admitted. "We laughed at you." "You did," John replied, taking a bite of stew. "But that didn't mean I should let you die. That's not how humans work." Solara tilted her head. "Then how do humans work?" John looked into the fire for a long moment. "We believe, even if you're hated, you still help. Even if you're laughed at, you still try, because we're stubborn like that." The fire popped. Above them, the 2 suns had vanished. Now the sky was full of stars, blue, green, and blood-red ones. It was quiet, peaceful, and somehow strangely romantic. The princesses didn't know what to say. These weren't the kind of words they heard from their usual suitors, rich alien princes who bragged about their warships or polished horns. This human wasn't trying to impress anyone, and somehow that was impressive. After a while, Solara stood. Without saying a word, she walked behind a nearby boulder to clean her hands in a pool of glowing liquid moss. John didn't mean to look, but when she stepped back into the firelight, her robe was wet and clinging to her curves. He looked away instantly. "Sorry, didn't mean..." Solara noticed him turning and smirked. "You've seen worse, I'm sure," she said. Not really," John muttered, staring hard at his soup. She sat beside him, closer this time. Her arm brushed his. "You're brave," she said, "but also shy. That's unusual." John laughed nervously. "Humans are complicated." Vinya leaned in from the other side. "So are alien princesses. Except you 3 don't seem so royal now," John said, teasing gently. Thaleen giggled. "Good. I hate acting perfect." They all laughed, a real laugh this time. Not cruel, not mocking, just warm. For the first time, they felt like 4 people around a fire. Not royalty, not alien, not human, just people. Solara stared at him for a long moment. "If we make it out of this," she said quietly, "you'll be remembered." John raised a brow. "As what?" Thaleen smiled. "As the human who survived us." Vinya added, "Or, maybe, the human who changed us." John looked up at the stars. "Let's survive first. Then we'll talk titles." They all chuckled again, and above them, a shooting star blazed across the alien sky. Secrets of the human body Solara wasn't trying to spy, but when she peeked through the vines that covered the bathing spring, she saw something she wasn't ready for. The human was glowing. Not in a magical way. No. It was the way the early sun hit his wet skin. The way muscles moved under scars she didn't expect him to have, the way steam curled around his broad shoulders. For someone she once mocked, he looked nothing like the weak creature she had imagined. She stepped on a branch. Snap. John turned sharply, catching a blur of white as she disappeared behind the vines. Back at the campsite, Vinya was fiddling, with John's multi-tool pressing random buttons like a curious child. "Why do humans even need this much stuff just to survive?" she asked. "Because we don't have natural weapons or glowing eyes," John answered, walking up behind her, drying his hair with a strange cloth. "We make tools to match what nature didn't give us." Vinya tilted her head. "But you don't seem weak anymore," John chuckled. "Because you stopped trying to step on me like a bug?" Solara returned quietly, face flushed. She sat down and avoided eye contact. John noticed, but said nothing. As the day went on, they followed John to a nearby cliffside where he was trying to fix a comms beacon. Thaleen leaned over his shoulder, watching closely. "You move so fast. And your hand, they're weird. Soft, but they fix everything." John smiled. "That's called manual labor. We do it a lot back home." "You sweat so much," she said, wiping a drop from his cheek without thinking. He blinked. She froze. Their eyes met. "Sorry," she said quickly, pulling back. Instinct. John tried to keep working, but he could feel something shifting. The tension was no longer from hate or fear. It was curiosity, a strange closeness. Later that night, the wind howled harder. The skies of Vathor grew darker. They sat near the fire again, huddled tighter this time, not because of the cold, but because it felt right. Solara finally spoke. "I saw your back today," she said softly. John looked up. "Oh? You have scars," she added. "Old ones." John nodded. "War. Training. One's from a Martian mining rig accident." "Why do you keep going?" she asked. "Even after pain?" John stared into the fire for a long time. "Because if pain stopped me, I'd never get anywhere. Humans break, but we rebuild." Thaleen whispered, "That's kind of beautiful." Vinya nodded slowly. "So are your eyes." John raised an eyebrow. "Now you're just teasing me." Solara smiled. "Maybe. But maybe we finally see you." The firelight made their alien skin glow even brighter tonight. Their robes had been torn, redesigned by John into more practical clothing. Shorter, tighter, easier for survival. And though they still looked like royalty, they now sat like equals. Solara reached forward and gently traced a finger across John's wrist. "Your pulse is fast," she said. "That's either fear or something else." John swallowed. "Maybe both." Thaleen leaned in. "We studied human biology in school, you know, but textbooks don't prepare you for this." Vinya added with a grin, "Especially not for that thing between your legs. We thought that was a myth." John turned red instantly. "Okay, that's enough science talk." The girls laughed, but it wasn't cruel this time. It was playful, bold, warm. Then suddenly, boom, a tremor shook the ground beneath them. Dust rose from cracks in the earth. John jumped to his feet. "We have to move." The cliffs above cracked. One giant boulder slipped free. Solara screamed. John didn't think. He launched forward and tackled her out of the way. The rock slammed into the spot she'd been sitting, crushing the ground. Everyone stared in shock. John groaned under her, bruised but alive. Solara looked down at him, face inches away. "Why do you keep saving us?" she whispered. He looked up at her. "Because somewhere along the way, I stopped wanting to be alone." Return to the throne. The palace crowd was ready to laugh again. After all, the 3 royal daughters were returning from the moon with a human. What could be more ridiculous? Alien nobles lined the grand staircase, smirking behind jeweled fans. Servants whispered bets. One ambassador even joked, "Maybe the human cried and begged to come home." Then the shuttle door opened, and no one said a word. John stepped out first. His clothes were torn, patched together from pieces of shuttlecloth and alien plant fibers. A blade made from bone and melted metal hung on his hip. His eyes were calm, tired, but proud. Behind him came 3 transformed princesses. Their royal gowns were gone, replaced with rough, practical outfits John had helped design. Their perfect hair was braided for survival. Their expressions were no longer cold or mocking. They weren't princesses anymore. They were survivors, and they followed him. The silence was so deep, you could hear the wind move. On the throne, King Zalor stood slowly. He examined his daughters, then looked directly at John. "Well," he said, "did you learn your lesson?" Before John could answer, Solara stepped forward. She looked straight at her father, no fear in her voice. "We learned that we were wrong. About humans, about him." The crowd gasped. Thaleen added, "He protected us, fed us, fought off beasts, taught us how to survive." Vinya smiled, "And he never once threw our insults back at us." More gasps. Now whispers. The king raised an eyebrow. "So, was he the joke?" Solara looked at John. "No," she said. "He was the reason we're still alive." Then, before anyone could stop her, Solara walked up to John and kissed him, right there, in front of the whole court, bold, confident. The room exploded with shocked voices. What is she doing? She kissed a human? The king didn't blink. He just said, "So, you've chosen." Solara turned. "I have." Vinya stepped forward. "Me too." Thaleen sighed and raised her hand. "If I have to share him, fine, but I get the warm side of the bed." The court was stunned into silence. 3 alien princesses, all willing to marry one human. John looked like he'd swallowed a star. "Wait, are we seriously doing this?" The king stepped forward now, a rare smile on his face. "When I first saw you, John of Earth, I saw something none of my people did. You were calm in the storm, soft in voice but sharp in mind. I knew you would challenge my daughters, not with weapons but with truth." John rubbed the back of his neck. "Honestly, I just wanted to fix your energy system." The king laughed. "Then you fixed something far greater. Their hearts." One noblewoman scoffed. "He's still human. Are we to believe earthlings are worthy of royal blood?" John turned to her calmly. "We don't need your belief. We build our worth one mistake at a time." Solara smirked. "And he's already built more than half the royal suitors ever could." Vinya added, "He taught us how to feel, not just rule." Thaleen gave John a wink. "And he cooks. Did we mention that?" The king raised his hand once more. "Then, so be it. Let it be written across the stars. The human has proven himself, and by royal decree, he is no longer just a guest. He is family." Cheers erupted, some genuine, some forced. John stood there, still stunned. 3 alien sisters, smiling at him. A king who had just made him royalty, and an empire watching the impossible happen. The human husband, they called it the wedding of the century, but no one believed it was real until the human actually said, yes. Across the galaxy, alien broadcasts couldn't stop replaying the moment. 3 royal daughters of Viridia, pledging themselves to one earthling male. The news anchors choked on their drinks. War generals paused their drills. One alien queen reportedly fainted. A human, as royal consort? And yet, it was true. John stood at the center of the palace's crystal garden, surrounded by glowing flowers and floating lanterns. He wore ceremonial robes made from the fabrics of Vathor, tough, scarred, and woven by alien hands and human ones. His hands trembled as he adjusted his collar. Solara stepped beside him first, confident, radiant, eyes locked on his. "You're not dreaming," she whispered. Vinya followed, mischief dancing in her smile. "And if you are, don't wake up." Thaleen approached last, her usual cold sarcasm replaced with a teasing grin. Just don't snore or I'm sleeping on the roof. The high priest raised the royal crest above them. Do you, John of Earth, accept this union with the daughters of Viridia, bound not by blood, but by battle, honor, and survival? John looked at each of them. He saw no royalty, no aliens, just the women who once mocked him, who now stood ready to share a future with him. He smiled. I do. The garden erupted in light. Months later, a new starship floated silently over Earth's orbit. Its name, Unity 1, a joint project between Earth and Viridia. Inside, John stood in the engine room, hands dirty with grease, voice humming an old Earth song as he worked on the core. Solara walked in, wearing a captain's coat. You know, husband, she said, you look hotter when you're fixing things. John smirked. You only like me now because I beat a lava worm. Thelene entered behind her. Correction, you stabbed a lava worm and then cooked dinner. Vinya appeared with a data pad. Also, your breakfast pancakes are still legendary in 7 systems. John threw up his hands. So I married 3 alien princesses and became a glorified chef. Solara kissed his cheek. You became our hero. On the view screen, a new message arrived. It was from the Viridian High Council. Earth's representative is requested for another alliance discussion. John raised an eyebrow. Me again? Thelene pushed him forward. You're the human husband now. You've got galaxies to impress. As the ship sailed forward into the stars, John looked at his wives and laughed. This all started because you mocked me, he said. Solara grinned. We'll never stop teasing you, Vinya added. But now we do it with love, Thelene smirked. And access to your shower. They all laughed. The galaxy once laughed at the idea of a human among royals. Now, they watched in awe. Because, against all odds, one human had done what no army, no ambassador, no warship could do. He won over the hearts of 3 alien sisters and changed the stars forever.